QSO Today, episode 536, Marty Young, W4MY. This episode of QSO Today is listener-sponsored. Become a listener sponsor monthly or annually by clicking on the sponsor banner on the show notes page or at the top of the QSOtoday.com webpage. Welcome to QSO Today podcast. I'm Eric Guth, amateur call sign 4Z1UG, where I demonstrate the diversity and relevance of the amateur radio hobby and its impact on society by interviewing ham radio operators, many of whom played vital roles in shaping our technology through the amateur radio hobby. And while many people might say, ham radio? Do people still do that? This podcast demonstrates through in-depth interviews just how amazing, diverse, and dynamic the amateur radio hobby continues to be. I'm recording this introduction on April 10th, 2026, as our campaign to raise money for AKTA, or Active Phage Purification System, for the Hadassah Research Center at Hadassah Hospital in Jerusalem. The details are on my blog page. We raised over $5,000 from the blog post, and that was matched by another donor. All in all, we raised about $10,000, and all of the money that we needed, about $50,000, we've also raised, so that we can purchase this machine to create a solution to the problem of antibiotic resistance in bacterial infections. My thanks to all of you who responded. My continued thanks to all of you who support QSO Today while I'm still recovering from my cancer and osteoporosis. The Ham Radio Workbench has an all-star node, 55915, that has become very active of late. I try to check in, but usually most folks in the West are fast asleep. If you are an all-star, check out their node, 55915, and say hi to George and the gang. I've been very busy building AI agents to create a small business to keep my grandchildren in shoes. Hermes is my choice so far, and I must say these agents, when let loose, are amazing. Pay attention to security concerns around them. I have to dream up some amateur radio uses. Already I see some very interesting tasks that my Hermes AI can do to make it easier to produce and deliver QSO Today. Stay tuned. Marty Young, W4MY, is a lifelong amateur radio operator whose 50-year journey began with a simple shortwave receiver as a child and grew into a deep passion for CW operation, homebrewing, and portable radios in the outdoors. From building his first Heathkit HW-16 as a teenager to leading roles in clubs, contesting, and parks on the air, Marty represents the classic self-taught ham who never stopped learning. His story reflects persistence, curiosity, and hands-on approach to radio that has carried him from the early days of Morse code and QSL cards to modern portable operations and mentoring new operators today. This interview was recorded last month before the North Carolina QSO Party's event on March 1st. My apologies for not getting this out beforehand. VE3GFN is my QSO Today. W4MY, this is Eric, 4Z1UG. Are you there, Marty?
Hello, Eric. 4ZUG. This is W4MY. I'm doing great, Eric. Thank you.
Marty, thanks for joining me on the QSO Today podcast. Can we start at the beginning of your ham radio story? When and how did it start for you?
Well, that was a long time ago. I'm in my 50th year now, so I really have to reach back and think about it. And I think the earliest memory I have is when I was 9 years old, when my parents, for my 9th birthday, I think, gave me a small tabletop shortwave and AM radio. It was on tabletop, and I don't know why they gave that to me. That doesn't seem like a normal present for a 9-year-old, but that's what they did. And I never have asked my mother why that was and what propensity I showed toward that, but apparently I did. And I loved that little radio, and I became a shortwave listener right away with that little radio. And you can just imagine how poor, I look back in retrospect, how poor a radio it was, but that was my world. And I went straight to shortwave listening. And back in the 70s, when all this was happening, early 70s and late 60s, there was a lot to hear. So that's what started it all, I think, for me. That's my earliest memory. And then as time went on, there's no internet, of course, those days. And so I learned a little bit here and there. By the way, I had no hams that I knew of in my family, no friends that were hams. There was nothing really for me. Unlike people I've heard before have, uncle, grandfather, etc., being a ham. I had none of that. That was my situation.
What was the hometown?
It was Jupiter, Florida.
Oh, okay.
Jupiter, Florida. I don't know if you've heard it. It's near West Palm
Sure.
Beach, Florida, South
I know
Florida.
Jupiter, Florida. And so,
Do you really?
well, I know it because I used to buy amplifier transistors from a company that specialized in cable television parts
Is that
in
right?
Jupiter, Florida. Yeah.
In Jupiter,
So that's
Florida,
how I know Jupiter, Florida. But it's okay. So your hometown is Jupiter, Florida. There were a lot
Yes.
of hams in the area. And
I know that company. Just to shoot forward a quick sidebar, real quick. I actually applied for a job after college to that company. I forget what it was, but I remember I applied for a job there. Yeah, and I didn't get the job. So anyway.
how did you find your way then into the hobby?
Well, okay. So I got into CB radio a little bit, and so here's how it started. My dad and mom used to have dinner parties in the part of their business. You know, they would invite people over, and they would adults, their friends, whoever it was. And I was a kid, and I was maybe 15 or 16 years old by this time. Meanwhile, I'm a shortwave listener. I'm doing CBs. I'm learning what I can. Again, no external influence. So one day, one of the times, one of the folks came over. I'll remember his name for some reason. His name is Tom McCarthy, and my dad showed him around the house, and I was in my room doing my whatever I was doing, and he saw the radios, and he said, "Oh, do you know Bill Asbury?" I said, "No, I don't know." "Oh, you gotta meet Bill Asbury. He's a radio guy too, you know." I said, "Oh yeah, sure." I mean, I wasn't against that. So he gave me the information, and I called Bill Asbury, who turned out to be my Elmer, but anyway, sort of. And so I got in touch with him, and he said, "Yeah, come on over." And we made an arrangement. And by that time, I was 16 because I drove over, so I was 16 years old then. And I knocked on the door. And, first of all, I came up to the house and I saw this giant quad. He had a quad, and it was the biggest antenna I had ever seen. And it was just mesmerized me. I said, "Wow, that is so cool," because I'm into radios, generally. But okay, so I knocked on the door, and his wife answered. He says, "Oh, well, come on in, Marty. We're expecting you. Bill is in the radio room right now. He's busy, but you can go in there and you can wait." And I turned the corner, and I looked into what was a room in his house, and it was a complete radio room. And I just was absolutely struck. My jaw dropped. I had never seen anything like it. And I couldn't believe it where I was and what I was seeing. And Bill believe it or not, he was a net control for the Maritime Mobile Net. I don't know if you remember that net. I mean, that's a big deal. And I look in retrospect, I look in my memory, I didn't know what I was looking at really, other than just radios and a lot of stuff. But I remembered, in retrospect, he had a Holocrafters twin set with a Henry linear amplifier. This is what I reconstructed later in my mind, what was there, but I didn't know it at the time. So I sat down and watched him, and he was the net control station. And so he finished, and he greeted me, said hello, but he was a big man. He was big. He was foot and a half taller than me and outweighed me by 100 pounds. And I felt like he was Foghorn Leghorn and I was the little chicken hawk, and he was nice. He was polite, but he was very direct, and he wasn't really a warm person, I would say, but he was polite and direct. And he said, so boy, you want to be a ham? I looked up at him. I said, "Yes, sir." and he reached around, and he got in his drawer, and he pulled out an Amico record and a book. And it was an Amico book and an Amico record. And he handed it to me. He says, "Okay." He said, "Learn the code, read the book, and come back when you're ready. And see you later." And I literally was only there, I don't know how long I was there, not including the time that I watched him be on the net, which was a little while. Maybe 15 minutes I was there, maybe. I don't remember much of the conversation, but I do remember him handing me the record, handing me the book, and say, "Come back when you know the code and read the book." And I left, and that was it. And that was my start, and that was my Elmer. But there's more to the story. There's more. So I went back, and I got out my old, from when I was a kid, the real record player thing, the when the box with the lid on it, and everything.
That's right.
And it had a little pamphlet. It had maybe 3 or 4 records in the set of the album, had maybe 3 or 4 records in it. And I read the pamphlet, and I remember, let me tell you what I thought when I was there as I looked at it. One more thought I remember having was, I want to be a ham no matter what it takes. I don't care if I have to walk barefooted over hot coals to get my ham license. I'm going to do it. Oh, this thing about CW and Morse code, I can do it. So I took the albums, I do it, and I started in my bedroom, and I literally went verbatim by the Amico course on the records on how to learn Morse code. And I got to tell you, in retrospect, looking back, it's all the wrong way to do it, back in the old days, the way they did it. But I did it. Well, during that time, okay, so I'm learning the code, I'm reading the book, I'm getting more information about ham radio. For some reason, even though I was exposed to radio and everything, ham radio was, I don't want to say a complete revelation to me, but it it couldn't have been, but maybe it just didn't hit me the way Bill Asbury Shack did, where it was almost like I was working with a puzzle with some missing pieces in it, and I didn't know what the pieces were. And when I hit when I was over at Bill's house, I realized that those are the missing pieces of the puzzle, and I just didn't know. Well, anyway, I got the book, I read the book, and time went on, and so a good amount of time went on, and I'm teaching myself the code, and I'm using all that. I have another friend whose dad, my friend, a teenage friend, my high school friend.
Right.
His dad was an electronics technician at Pratt & Whitney, the big plant where built aircraft in, and he was an electronic technician. And his dad's hobby, was building Heathkit televisions, and which he wasn't he wasn't even a ham. So I said his name was Mr. Duke. His name was James Duke, Mr. Duke. And so I connected it, and I went over to Jimmy Duke's house. And I talked to Mr. Duke, and he was great. I told him I wanted to be a ham, whatever. And I looked at his bench and his television sets he was building and all the great stuff. He was really nice, very helpful. And he said, okay. He gave me a Heathkit catalog, which I had never heard of Heathkit to that point. And I looked at it, and it just like, wow, that was just like the gates of heaven were open now. And now,
if you're a young person now, where you don't get the catalogs. I mean, the catalogs in the 60s and 70s, the Lafayette catalog, the Allied catalog, the Heathkit catalog, even the Sears Wish Book, they were gates to paradise.
That's exactly right. That's how that was the internet before the internet.
That's right. They were amazing.
And so, and I remember, here's a funny thing. I remember I took the book, and so I remember calling Mr. Duke on the phone. I called him Mr. Duke, even though he was my friend. Back then, you addressed adults that way, and it was fine. Mr. Duke. I said, Mr. Duke, do you mind if I cut out the little tab in the back of your catalog? Because my mother said, oh, it's Mr. Duke's catalog. Don't mess his catalog. You got to give that back to him, right? And so I asked him permission to cut the little coupon out of the back so I could mail it to Heathkit to get my own catalog.
Yeah.
And he said, sure, no problem. So I cut that out, and I mailed it to Heathkit, and I got my own catalog. Meanwhile, I'm still learning the code. I'm reading catalog, and now I know the rig I want to get. I want to get an HW-16, and I was in high school. I had a job. I had a car. I made, I had a little money, but I didn't have, big money like ham radio. I mean, I saw the price. I remember something like $139 for something like that. And that was a stretch. I mean, that was, serious money, So anyway, I learning the code, doing that, and I ordered the kit. I had no idea. I was not electronics. I was 16 years old by this time, maybe getting to be 17, and I had no idea how to build an electronic kit. But I knew I had Mr. Duke, and he would help. So what I did, I got the kit, I brought it over to him, Mr. Duke, and he taught me how to build it. He taught me all the things I needed to know, was very helpful, very patient, and taught me how to build it. So now I'm learning the code, I'm building the kit, and I'm just having a great time. And now by this time I'm a senior in high school, I'm playing baseball, I'm doing all the normal things. I'm not distracted. Ham radio, I'm not distracted. Nothing has taken me away from ham radio, my desire. Okay, so now we're a number of months later, and I think I'm ready for the code, and I got my kit, I'm building it, and I call Bill, Mr. Asbury. I says, okay, I'm ready. I read the Amico book. I thought, and they had all the stuff in there. I thought, and by this time I started knew about ham radio. I went to the library. I started looking at QST magazines, all at the library, other books. I was very, I I did a lot on my own to find more about it. Once the spark had sparked, it gave me a thread or gave me a direction to find out more information. So I went back, and Mr. Asbury said, okay, I'll write to the FCC. Back in those days, your Elmer had to write to the FCC to get the test, and then you went over and got the test at his house, and then he would then send it back to the FCC, and they would grade it. And I did all that, and I passed the test and everything, and he made me send, as well as receive. And I took the written test at his house on his kitchen table, and then he sent it back. And this, I believe, was in the fall or late or early winter of 1976. Okay. And so then I waited, and I continued to build my kit. And then I built my kit, and then I made some mistakes. I brought it over to Mr. Duke's house. He looked at it. He gave me some pointers. He fixed the mistakes I made. He had test equipment that he could check things, and we got it. And between him and me, we got it going. But then what I didn't have is he said, you need to get some crystals. Oh yeah, that's right. I need to get some crystals.
For transmitting on the HW-16.
For transmitting, because back then you had to be crystal controlled, and that rig transmitted only with crystals. I mean, it did otherwise, but I didn't know. But I needed crystals.
Yeah, I had the same rig as a novice.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Okay. So what did I do? I went to the back. Well, I had subscribed to the other magazines, and I went to the back of QST magazine, I think maybe, in the library, and so where I could buy some crystals. And I found Jan Crystal, who was in Fort Myers, Florida, which, great. So I wrote to Jan Crystals, and I told them what I wanted, and they wrote back to me in the mail. This is the mail now. I wrote back to them, and they wrote me back. They sent me a Jan Crystal catalog, and they also say, okay, you need to get these kinds of crystals. And a nice note. I wish I still had it, but I don't have that note. They wrote me a very nice note, and they said, this is what you need. And I ordered it, and it was, I don't know, it was $3 for a crystal, and I ordered 2 or 3 or 4 of them. I don't remember. And I sent them a money order for, I don't know, $15 or $18, or something like that. And then, so meanwhile, I start listening on the HW-16, and then I started, well, what do I do for an antenna? Well, the Heathkit book had how to get into ham radio, and they had a diagram how to build a dipole in the book, and this is what you got to do, and you got to make an antenna. And I built that, the antenna, a dipole. Nobody taught me how to build it. I just followed the directions in the Heathkit book. And I put it up, and my mother, she was very gracious. She let me put the wire up, and she said, when we sell the house, you got to take that down. So I said, okay. So I did all of that on my own, basically, from what I read. I called Mr. Asbury once and asked him a couple of questions. But to tell you the truth, he was polite, but he wasn't, that was just his personality, his nature. He just was not real helpful. Said, well, you'll figure it out. You'll find. You passed your test. He says, have you got your license yet? I said, no, not yet. He said, well, when you get it, you'll know what to do. And that was good.
Did you get your packet of QSL cards from the little print shop?
No, not yet. But wait.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
That's okay. No, that's okay. That's okay. I mean, don't let me forget it. Don't let me forget that. And so okay. So I did that, and I talked to Mr. Duke, of course, about it, and he wasn't sure. He said, well, you don't really have to worry about it. You can use, if your antenna's not perfect when you're receiving, don't worry about it. You'll still hear fine. And that was good. So I did it, and he was right. It worked. So now I start listening on my HW-16, and I'm doing my records, learning CW more. After I passed the test, though, still, I'm not able to converse with CW. I passed the test using the records,
Right.
But I'm listening. Oh, and what a wonderful world that was for me to hear and listen. It's only CW only. Not in those days, it's only CW. That was that's all I could do when I got my ticket anyway, so I didn't worry about it. I just listened, and I listened to, and how good the receiver was. And then I remember I would listen on 40 meters on that rig, even though it didn't have the filtering for AM or anything. I could hear the broadcast stations, and I could make out pretty good what the broadcast stations were doing. Pretty good. It wasn't perfect, but it was good enough to where I realized my SWL radio, my tabletop radio that I've been using all day, wasn't such a good radio. I realized how lacking it was, So anyway, I'm listening, and I'm listening to QSOs. I'm copying them. I'm writing them down, and I'm doing all of that. And then we're talking 5 or 6 months ago, and I still don't have my license yet. I haven't heard a thing out of the FCC yet. I called Mr. Asbury Bill one more time, and I said, what do you think? He said, well, it takes a long time. Don't worry. Be patient. Well, okay. So I took my test in late fall, early winter, and now it's May. I remember May. And all of a sudden in the mail start coming stuff addressed to me in the mail. Now I'm 16, 17 years old. I didn't get much mail,
right,
other than,
no, none of us did.
Yeah. My parents got mail. I didn't get mail.
Right.
Well, it's coming to me now. Okay. Lafayette catalog, Radio Shack catalog, other things, the QSL advertisements you brought up, the little samples of QSLs. I still don't have my license yet, right?
Did you see your license number in the address?
I don't remember. I suppose it probably was.
That's how I knew my first call sign was. I got a package of QSL cards from the little print shop, and they had my license.
Yeah, they may have. I don't remember. Yeah, well, and I remember, and the thing about it was that what I didn't put two and two together at first, that this was because I was now a ham, but didn't know it. I didn't put that at first. I realized it eventually, but not at first. And I don't know. And the time span when I started getting that stuff was about I don't know how many. It was a number of days. It wasn't really a long time. Maybe it was a week. It was, I don't know. No, I thought maybe something was up. And sure enough, that nice letter, what it looked to be like a nice business, the kind of mail my dad got, was addressed to me. Yeah, important stuff, and it was addressed to me. And sure enough, there it was. I had my license, and that was in May. That was in May of 1975.
75 or 76?
No.
Yeah.
76. 76. It was in May of 76. So sure enough, and by then I had my crystal, and I was tuning up into a dummy load, that I figured out, which was a light bulb, which Bill told me that's what you use, a light bulb. And so but I never, I was doing that. I did do that, but I was now on the air, and I was now on the air, but I was very timid. So this was in May, okay, just to give you an idea how long it took. My first QSO on that rig was on October 11th, 1976. And the reason I know that is because it's on a QSL card on the wall back there. I still have my first QSL card of my first QSO, W4MY. That's why I remember the date.
And now this mid-show break. The QSO Today project now has over 500 podcast episodes and hundreds of hours of virtual ham radio expo presentations, all freely available and fully supported by you, the listener. This short message and the later mention of the Ham Radio Workbench podcast are the only breaks in the program. QSO Today has no commercial sponsors, so no one influences the content or direction. This project exists solely to promote amateur radio and the people who make it thrive. Producing QSO Today is like a half-time job. Your support at any level covers the tools, hosting, and production costs that keep it going. And while it is a labor of love, it isn't free. Only about 6% of listeners contribute. Please consider making a donation. Use the slider on our donations page to set up the amount that reflects the value that you get from each episode or from our library of educational videos. Make it monthly to help secure the next 500 episodes. You can also become a listener sponsor, shop on Amazon using our referral link, share QSO Today with friends, subscribe to our mailing list and YouTube channel, and help spread the word. Every action is value for value. Keep QSO Today alive by taking action now. We return to our QSO. So once you had your ham license, did you discover any other hams at school? Did you all of a sudden discover that there might have been some other students that were hams?
There was one. Yes. I forget his name. And I remember we're going to the senior trip. I was a senior in high school. They were on the senior trip going to Disney World. You do that when you're a senior. They were on the bus going, and I sat next to a guy on the bus who I didn't know. I went to a very big school. So it was not unusual that you would meet people you didn't know, even though they were the same age as you. Everybody had their circle of friends, how that worked. So anyway, he sat next to me. And I don't know with me, I'm sure the conversation, it came up that I'm a ham radio operator. I'm sure that came up. And he's, oh, yeah, so am I. And I didn't even know him. Anyway, his name was Jeff. And I never kept track of him because he moved out after he moved away, and I never found him again. Jeff, if you're listening, get in touch with me. You'll remember. I'm Marty on the senior bus. Remember that? Okay. So
on the way to Walt Disney World.
On the way to Walt Disney World during the senior trip. So we talked about ham radio.
I was in Orange County when I graduated from high school, and we would go to Disneyland for the senior trip. So it was
we would go to Disney World in Orlando.
Right, for a grad night. I think grad night is what they called it.
Grad night, senior, grad night, as they called it. Yeah, something like that.
I had a similar experience. I went to 3 high schools, and the second high school I went to was in La Mesa, California, and I was on the water polo team. And for some reason, we were like carpooling back from a water polo meet, and there was a guy in the car that I didn't know well, but he was on the team with me. And we pull up to his house, and there's this big, tri-band beam on the house. And so I asked, is your dad a ham radio operator? And he says, no, I'm the ham radio operator. So Glenn Jensen, if you're listening, that was when I found out you were a ham radio operator. So it was very funny that you didn't really talk about it too much at school, but all of a sudden you're doing a completely different activity, and there's
yes, it was completely different.
That's right, and there's a ham radio operator sitting in the car with you.
And I played baseball, I played in the band, I did all the normal stuff that you would do. It's just so that Jeff, and he wasn't a big hammy. He was like me. He was a novice, but he had built a night kit. He told me about his night kit, that he had. Apparently, I don't remember, and he had it, but I think his night kit was a transmitter, I think, and he had a big, giant receiver. He told me all about it, but I never actually saw his station. I never subsequently followed up with Jeff.
Well, Marty, this is a very interesting origin story, but I bet, it's been 50 years now. This is your 50th anniversary of being you are now, intoxicated by ham radio. Did that intoxication take you into your professional life? I mean, did you then leave high school with this idea that somehow you had to be involved in radio?
Yes and no. Yes, in that it steered me in the direction that my career path took me, yes. But it wasn't specifically in radio in the end. It was at the beginning. And so the way that transpired, that I went in the Navy after high school. And so I became an electronics technician because I really enjoyed that. And being, of course, I wanted to be a radio guy in the Navy, of course. That was a radio man. That was the first thought. But then that was right when the Vietnam War was, and I was thinking to myself, whether I'm proud of this or not, I was thinking to myself, how am I gonna dodge that? How am I gonna best situation for me to stay out of there?
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, well, going in the Navy, I can do that. And of course, the Vietnam War had ended, so I wasn't by that time. But that was always a big concern of me all through high school.
Right.
So I just decided that I had another friend who was not a ham, who I worked with at the grocery. His name was Clyde, an old guy who was not a ham. Again, not a ham, but he was in the Navy, and his story was just fantastic. Won't get into all that, but his had a fantastic story in the Navy.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, he influenced me on my decision on what I should do in the Navy. So I took the electronic path and went to electronics, and that led me to my job in the Navy, who I then had met other people, older adults than me in the Navy, who gave me other mentoring directions, who were a ham. There was a guy I worked with in my job took me in the Navy one time into an electronic shop who had a civilian contractor, Jim. His name was Jim K5 FTK, full Texas kilowatt. Jim, if you're still listening, he was older than me, but not much older, and he might still be around today. I don't know. Jim, if you're saying, hey, Jim. He advised me about getting my electronic credentials, not more than ham radio, my FCC phone, my phone license, and my first class and second class, which I got. He said that will pay off for you when you get out, and he was right. I wouldn't have known otherwise if it weren't for him to do that. What that did for me then, when I did get out, was that I wanted to go to college, and I had money from the military to go to college, and so I had this FCC credential. And so here I am in the summer working at a camp for boys in New Hampshire, running the radio station, running the ham radio station, running the commercial radio station, at the camp, which was small. It was small potatoes, small time. But here I am in my job. I was there all summer. I'm in the ham shack at night when the boys went to bed, doing my own thing on my own time. And who do I run into on the radio? The chief engineer of the television that was in the town where I was going to where I was slated to go to college in Orlando. I went to UCF in Orlando.
Uh-huh.
And here is the chief engineer of this television station that is looking to hire part-timers to work there, And I'm thinking to myself, he said, look me up when you get to Orlando. We had a nice QSO on phone. And he said, when you get to Orlando, look me up and I'll have you in and we'll give you a job here at the TV station. I said, great. So I get to Orlando, I look him up, he brings me in, and he hires me. And I was replacing another college student who was graduating, who worked nights. And I got to tell you, so meanwhile, I went to college, I lived in Orlando, and I went to college. And believe it or not, that job paid a living wage to somebody who needed a job like that to support a family.
Right.
In other words, I was making good money, way more than my friends that were flipping hamburgers, So here I am working part-time in a television, this is legitimate. This was, big mark, and I couldn't believe it. And so here I am working in a television station, making good money. And now I had money. I had money for college. My parents gave me some money for other things that did whatever. I was living the life of Riley, going to college, working at the television station, meeting celebrities that would come that were, of the time, I would meet them, It was working at a television station, and it was just.
And you got your degree in what?
Electrical engineering.
Okay. And then after college, where did you go?
Okay, then I went to, I got a job at Martin Marietta in town there, worked there, and then I just worked in the grind, and I got laid off from there. It worked, and just stayed in I stayed in the automotive industry doing automation and metrology. I got into later in my career. I got into metrology, which is, if you know what that is, that's the study of measurement.
Right, but metrology in your case might be test equipment, calibration, things like that, right?
Yes, all that test equipment. That's exactly right.
Yeah,
that's exactly right.
And ham radio operators love test equipment.
But what I found out when I got a job at the television station, one interesting aspect is what I found out there was that everybody else I worked with in the engineering department and the television station, everybody was a ham. Bob Deal, who was the chief engineer that hired me, he only hired hams.
Oh, is that right?
I don't know if that was legal or not. I don't know. It was a long time ago. He hired everybody, the whole engineering department. I want to say without exception. I might be wrong about that. There might have been some exceptions, but predominantly the staff of the engineering department of that whole TV station, we were all hams.
But I think that was a safe bet because hams, even today, hams have a can-do attitude when other people don't. They won't go that extra mile because they know that they can, right? So I think it was a safe bet. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a safe hire for him. Yeah, and so anyway, that's what happened. So I went to school. And school was hard for me. I was not a natural, and I did some crazy things while I was working. I worked crazy hours, and it was a time. It was stressful, but it was a good stress, I would say, as far as keeping up with school and working the job, and then and then having the rest of your life continue. I met my wife there, and I was, so here, all of this was going on. I bought a new car, I had money, I could buy a new car, all kinds of things. I'd go to Ham Fests. I would do, can I back up and talk about field day?
Can we put it in the context of some of the contests that you like a little bit later?
Yeah. Okay. Very good.
Because I think what I want to know is during this period of time that you're in college and stuff in Orlando, are you operating ham radio or are you just too busy?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Oh, yes. I kind of left that out maybe. Oh, yes. I had my apartment, my landlord in my apartment. It was one of those small eight resident apartment buildings, 8 people. And my landlord let me put an antenna on the roof. I had my HW6. Well, I have my HW-101 by now, because I left that out of my early story. But I got an HW-101 that I built while I was in the Navy. That's another story, but I won't digress to that right now. But I had my HW-101. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I was very active, mostly on CW. I got my general license while I was in the Navy. I forgot to tell you about that.
Right, it's okay.
I got my general with Jim, Full Texas Kilowatt. He helped me. That thing, you had to go to the FCC for that and all that. He helped me with that. I got my general. Oh, yeah, I was a very, in all respects, a normal ham doing all the ham stuff. Mm-hmm. I got into RTTY and got some green machines for a while there. What else did I do? I even, when the Russian satellites first came out, I got involved with. In all respects, I went to club meetings. There was a club there. I went to the club meetings. I got involved in the Orlando Ham Fest as far as staff to work, work it, with the club. In all respects, I was a normal ham in every active.
While you were going to college, yeah.
While I'm going to college, yeah.
Now, you say you met your wife there in Orlando. Did she have any issues with your ham radio interest?
No, not really.
Oh,
no.
Good. Okay.
Just to give you an aside, later in our life, she let me put a tower in the front yard.
The front yard, no less.
The front yard, yeah.
Amazing.
Well, part of it in the yard.
Yeah. And
part of it in the front
do
yard.
you have children, and did they have an interest?
No. I have a son and a daughter. And my daughter's in California now, and my son lives in Wilmington, North Carolina. And, there was a period of time when he was a middle teenager like me, that maybe I said, yeah, hey, man, you got to learn. Still, even then, when he was a teenager, code was still required. And you got to learn code and everything. And I started teaching it to him, and he sort of kind of had a passive interest, but it didn't stick.
Yeah, that's so funny, because I have the same thing. My kids didn't show any interest at all, and it's, maybe it's just because I'm the dad. Maybe the.
Yeah, well, yeah. I don't know.
Maybe the grandchildren.
To me, nobody sparked my interest. It was somehow, it came from within somehow. I don't know where it came from. But no, the same thing didn't happen to them. No, but it was okay, because we very amenable, and it turned out I was who I was. And they thought I did some really strange stuff, and I probably did, but that was just who I was, and it was fine.
Don't embarrass me, Dad, by talking about ham radio.
That's right. Yeah, don't embarrass. Yeah, there you go. That's right. Yeah, that's right.
I've heard that before.
So stuff like that. So that's really that was my case.
Are you retired now? Is that your status?
Yeah, I'm retired, but I got some side hustles. I've done a little bit of consulting with a small company that did automation for STEM.
Uh-huh.
Those kids that go and do the robots, and they're all of that. So I did a little bit of electronic consulting to a firm for a little while after I retired, and it was just, I did it for the fun. I didn't do it because I needed the money or anything. It was fun. And so, but that's kind of winding down right now. So yeah, I would consider myself retired. I don't know if I ever will be.
Your favorite operating mode is
CW.
CW. Okay.
Oh yeah.
And I understand, because on your QRZ page, you've got an automation, a POTA automation, so that apparently if you update your POTA scores, it automatically copies over to your QRZ page. I'll put a link to how that's done in the show notes page. But okay, so you have a great interest in POTA. So let's talk a little bit about you and POTA. How did you get interested in POTA?
Well, you have to go back to field day for the origin of that. I really took to field day early on. My first field day was in 1977. The following summer, after I got my license, I was involved with field day, and I showed up. I saw it in the newspaper, and I added the newspaper. Because people read newspapers, right? Hey, this club's doing, and it was a club. So I showed up, and they were glad to see me, and said, "We need a novice operator. We need a novice captain." So I got my HW-16. I brought it out there, if you can believe it. With these, they were great. And I had I was hooked on being out in the air. I love the outdoors. And so I participated in field day almost without exception. There were some exceptions over the years, but in the 50 years, I've had 49 field days, or something like that. I don't know. It's okay. So I love the outdoors. I love camping. I love hiking. I do all that kind of stuff. especially the mountains, etc. I just enjoy that. That's always kind of been another hobby and another avocation. It's camping and being the outdoors. So mixing ham radio and outdoors is just that's the final 1-2 punch for me. That's my 1-2 punch. Outdoors and ham radio. Is there anything better?
Well, I think that I mean I've been ham for a little bit over 50 years too, and I think that maybe that POTA is the result of the miniaturization of radios. I mean, they're not huge, right? You can take them out to the field. HOA, I mean, a lot of people live in HOAs now, and maybe the only chance they get to operate is to take it out into the park rather than operate it from home.
That's true. Well, I don't have the situation. I have a tower in the backyard that's allowed within the ordinances. It's allowed. And so, yes, but I think that was the 1-2 punch for me. And so the field days and back in the day, and even now, field days are hard work. It was never work to me. I did it year after year, got involved. The camaraderie that goes with it, all of those aspects. You're with people that I guess think like one of the criticisms I used to get in clubs over the years was, Marty, we like you and everything, but you talk about ham radio too. These are from hams at a club meeting. so that gives you a feel. I'm talking to hams and they're telling me, yeah, we like you and everything, but you talk about ham radio. And so that, I say that to give you a feel for my enthusiasm for ham radio. It has always been. I was never one of those hams that gave it up for a while and came back.
Well, I guess if you've done 49, 50 field days.
Well, yeah, I mean.
Are you a master at field day? I mean, you know exactly what to take and what not to take and how to set it up and all that stuff?
In addition to my job as NCQP chairman in that club, I belong to the club that is the host to that contest. That's how, in other words, the Raleigh Amateur Radio Club is the one that is the host of, they administer the North Carolina. But in addition, being attached to that club, I am their field day chairman this year also, and that's work, but that's okay. I don't mind. And they're a great club and they do a great field day. And so I have a lot of field day experience. So I give that back to I am their field day chairman. I was last year, and I was a few years ago after a few years off of it. So anyway, yes. So.
And now this mid-show break. Every 2 weeks, I listen to the Ham Radio Workbench podcast with George, KJ6VU, Vince, VE6LK, Mark, N6MTS, Thomas, K4SWL, Michael, VA3MW, and Rod, VA3ON, and their guest on often topical and important projects in amateur radio. This discussion amongst the regulars and their guests remind me of the conversations that I used to listen to on 146.94 and 146.46 megahertz in Orange County, California, while working on my own workbench almost 50 years ago. It is amazing how much practical ham radio knowledge that we can absorb by listening to the Workbench podcast that starts to make sense when we start our own deep dive into our own projects. So join me by listening to the Ham Radio Workbench podcast now and as George and crew push beyond 200 episodes. You can get to the Ham Radio Workbench podcast by clicking on the banner in this week's show notes page. And now, back to our QSO. Do you get extra points for taking care of the media? I mean, do you invite the media to come and you get some television time and some, now social media time?
Yes. There are points for posting on social media. There are points for bringing an elected official to come visit. And there are points for a shared service like the Red Cross or something like that to come and visit. And what we do to get them to come, we invite them to the supper.
There you go. So you bribe them with food.
Bribe them with food.
Yeah, well, I think everybody bribes people around the world with food, yeah.
Yeah, I learned that there was some for field day early on that I learned that, how to get them there,
Let's zag over to POTA because I was interested.
Okay. So that was outdoors, and so here we are. So now POTA comes in, I think 2016 when the AWRL did it, and I did a couple. I dabbled in it. I went to a national forest and operated and that was good. I liked that. It didn't really spark me at the time, but I thought it was really cool. And then when I heard that another group had picked it up after the AWRL, that was great. I didn't get at it right away. I think 2020, and then COVID happened. It seemed to me that COVID happened. That kind of messed everything up. you would think that would be good for POTA, but actually there were other things going on in my life at the time that I had to concentrate on. I didn't really do it. But 2021 came, or early 2022, and I said, okay, this is really cool. And I did it again, and I went on the app, and I signed up and learned how to use it. And it just, I don't know, I felt like, although ham radio had never waned very much with me, it ebbed and flowed over. And big things come up in your life, and you put it aside for a little while, and you can bring it back. But it never, it was always there. But I felt, again, like I felt in my early days when I was a kid that I told you. I had that feeling again. It's great. I loved it. And I really took to it. And so I built it up, and I learned, and I have learned a couple of really great things. I have a rule now for myself. No more wires and trees. Wires and trees are great. They work good. It's just that doing POTA, no more wires and trees, because I don't know the rules. You go to park, they have different rules. And a lot of parks around here, I don't know about there where you are, but the parks don't like you. Some of the parks don't like you throwing and disturbing the flora and the fauna, and so I don't know which ones are which. I just make it simple for myself, and I just say, okay, I'm going to do other things. I have found other alternatives. I've learned more about antennas. I've optimized small antennas and found the ones that work and the ones that don't. And the ones that I find that work, it's kind of a new exploration for me to learn. And I have found some great ones that work really well that I can build and not have to spend a whole lot of money to buy. A lot of great antennas out. A lot of them are pretty expensive, but a lot of I went back to the old 1930s handbook. Mm-hmm. 1930s. I got an AWI handbook from the 1930s, and I did some investigation, and I copied an antenna design that is not in vogue anymore, actually. But I said, I'm going to try that, and it's a killer, and it works great, and it's easy, it's simple, it's small, no more wires and trees, and so I love it. That's the kind of stuff that I do.
What is your POTA rig?
I started out with a Elecraft K2 that I did not build it, and then I bought a Mission RGO1. I don't know if you've heard of that radio.
No,
it's a guy in Bulgaria. I think where is he? He's in Europe somewhere.
Is this the one that's like in a cast aluminum frame?
No. It's in a regular case a conventional case. Like, it's very good. It's in a conventional case. It has what looks to be like a printed front panel, but it's not printed. But it's plastic. It's a polymer of some sort. And it's not metal, but it's good. It works. It's really great. RGO1 and Boris LZ. Where is that? Is that what country is Lima's? That's his call sign. It's one of those European. It's one of those Eastern European countries,
like Latvia or something like that.
Yeah, well, or Czechoslovakia or one of them. I'm not sure which one, because the geography in my lifetime, the geography has changed a lot.
That's right. Czechoslovakia is now the Czech Republic and
Czech Republic, and I think he's in one.
Slovakia, the Slovak Republic.
I don't want to be mistaken which one he's in, but anyway, he's over there. He's great. He's a good engineer, and he has a great radio. I use that, and then I also of late I bought an FTTX10 that I used for field day. That was a great rig for field day that I bought, but I'm starting to use it a lot for POTA. I also am looking to get into on my bench, in my electronic bench, which I do some restorations. I've restored a couple of HW8s. Rigs.
Okay.
And I'm thinking about going, now I haven't done it yet, but I'm thinking about going retro POTA and doing with my HW8s, something with CW, And I operate mostly, not all, but mostly.
Well, the HW8 wasn't a very good radio, as I recall.
No, but I've made some.
That's what I'm saying. You could make some improvements, and so it still looks like an HW8, but it doesn't perform like one.
Yeah, so I dabble in that, but mainly I use lately I've been using my FTDX10, which is a kind of larger, but it's a great CW rig, and so I'm gravitating to paying a little bit of a penalty for its size,
right?
To get the CW the way I want to be able to hear.
And the antenna that you use, because you don't throw things in trees anymore. So what do you take out, like a fiberglass pole or something like that?
Well, think of the POTA Performer. Have you heard of that?
No.
The POTA Performer is an EL. Again, going back to 1930s. I think it sparked me because Crank IR. Have you ever heard of that antenna? The Step IR company.
Step IR, yeah. Oh, the Crank IR. Yes, it's a.
They make a
tripod with a crank.
Yes, very good, very expensive, very good. I said, well, I don't want to spend the money, but I have a friend who has one. And our field day and other experiences out in the wild, he's brought it out there and it works very well. So I said, well, let me set, what is this antenna? What is it? In its basic form, what is it? Because it's very complicated and very modern and all of that. I said, but it's basically something, and I got to find out what it is. Well, I did some research, went back to, I had to go all the way back to the 1930s handbook to find it. It's called the L. It's basically a vertical with a resonant counterpart, as opposed to a vertical with a ground system. That's the difference. And I said, well, I'm going to try that. So I'm going to go to the, I'm going to make one. I made my own. I made it. It's easy to make. I found out that there's a company called Poda Performer that makes one, commercial version, and it's a nice antenna, but it's well manicured. It's very well designed. It's very it's very well machined, and it's a very good piece of engineering equipment that they have out there. But it's expensive. I built a homebrew version and have been using it ever since. And I got to tell you, it's great. I love it. And I have little segments and written and read about it, et cetera. And that's my primary intent is a Poda Performer homebrew that I built. Or I shouldn't call it a Poda Performer because it's not a Poda Performer because the company that made it called it that name. But everybody knows it by that name, but it's actually called an EL.
So if you're going to parks, then you're being chased, right, by chasers, right?
Yes, that's exactly right. That's where it comes in of being the belle of the ball, being the one being chased. That's what I like. That gives me a thrill, being chased, being the one. These guys go on expeditions to these remote islands, and they work a million cues and stuff, and that's not going to be me. I would love to be that someday, but no, that's not ever going to be me. So I look for it in small ways. And interesting, and I have a friend, Vlado, who's my friend. His call is W3, what's escaping me now, W3CW. He is one of those guys, has done that in the past. And he tells me that doing POTA is the same thrill that he got when he was on one of these island expeditions. He said it's the same. He said, so you don't need to go on that. And so Vlado, hey Vlado, I'm sorry I forgot your call sign.
Right. So you don't have the months at sea, you don't have the fleas, you don't spend all the money, you're not taking all the risk, who knows, all that to go. Now it can be interesting going to POTA, going to a park and setting up your antenna. I don't want to use the word risk, but it certainly can be a challenge sometimes. And you just have to put priority on being a good neighbor, taking care of taking care of the part. You only leave your footprints, Leave it better than you found it.
Yeah, leave it better than you found it, and be cognizant of all these things. But so there are minor challenges in that respect. But if you have I say with that Poda Performer and being able to set up my beach umbrella on the tailgate of my pickup truck with a tripod, and I use my laptop and the battery technology is so much better today than it used to be. It's so easy, to do. And I love it. I can work 10 QSOs or I can work 100 and it's all to me, I do phone.
Do you use the POTA operation as an opportunity to promote ham radio to people that might be passing by in the park? Yes, I do. And I want to say I put in the back of my mind, I put priority on that. Does that make sense? In other words, if somebody comes up to me and is interested in what I'm doing, I will put POTA on hold for a minute to talk to them. I do carry around some eyeball QSL cards, like we hand out, it's a little novelty, but I talk to them, and yes, and I hear everything under the sun from people. They're very nice. They say things like, oh, my grandfather was a ham, or I know somebody that was this. Is that what great conversations, because usually people that come up to me have some connection remotely to ham radio in some way. Random people who have never heard of it don't really as much, I think. But it's people who have that remote connection in their lives, in their family or friends or whatever, and they want to know if it's the same, if I'm doing the same thing as what they remember this, or whatever, and that's usually how this conversation starts. And I just have yes, it doesn't happen every time. I would say maybe out of 10 activations, that might happen 3 times out of 10. Something like that. From all of this POTA activity that you've done and promoting the ham radio to people that might walk by your POTA. What's the biggest lesson that you've learned in terms of enhancing your ham radio from POTA?
The greatest lesson.
What have I learned from this new experience?
It might sound funny the way I say this, but never stop learning. Never stop your quest for knowledge, even if it's not about ham radio necessarily. It could be about other things. But never be closed to learning something new. Never be closed to how ham radio is changing and being adept at it. It doesn't mean you have to like it. It has to be you. You choose your own path, and there's so many paths in ham radio to go down. It's so wide open for anybody to do almost anything. But don't be closed-minded to learning something. And so we say, what have I learned? I've learned that just keep learning. It's like this POTA performer. We realize this L antenna. I didn't know about the L antenna until I decided, how am I going to fulfill this desire I have not to put any wires in trees? Not that wires in trees are bad. It's just that that's for me, right? So I had to learn something new. Our club is on Discord. I don't know if you've heard of Discord. It's a community of people online. I'm involved with that. I talk to club members. It's great. It's not what we used to do. We used to use email reflectors, and we used to go to club meetings, drink coffee together.
And you got a paper made bulletin in the mail once a month,
a bulletin you got in the mail.
Right.
Catalogs that you got in the mail, and then you clip the coupon out and send them in the mail to get your catalog. You don't do that anymore. We can go online and click stuff, and we can get information that is just at our fingertips. And now with AI, this AI thing, wow. All I'm saying is it doesn't mean, you can have your opinion about if it's good or bad or whatever. FT8, ham radio has changed since FT8. Ham radio has changed since they did away with the CW, which I have a funny story, by the way, how I got my extra. It is a funny story how I got my extra. But all these things. So what I've learned is just keep learning. And you don't have to be part of something maybe you don't like or whatever. That's fine. But keep your mind open to stuff, because it's just, there's so much.
Yeah, I think there is. You mentioned that you're the chairman of the QSO party.
Yes,
is it the North Carolina
QSO party?
QSO
yes.
party.
Uh-huh.
So first of all, what is a QSO party for those of us that may not be involved with them? Are they? What are they? And what does it mean to be the chairman of the QSO party? I mean, is it a big event? Is it a weekly event? What is it?
Okay, well, generally, if you're a ham in the United States, this is basically a North American phenomenon. So for hams that are not in the United States, all stations are invited to participate all over the world. But it's really centered around the state of North Carolina, hams in the state of North Carolina, and hams that want to speak to hams. Okay, not all, but most all of the 50 states have an event like this. Not all states. You go to the New England, basically, in the little states, they all kind of group together. Out west in the Seven Land, they kind of group together because of the sparse population out there. But generally, every state has a QSO party. It's an event on the air, is what it is. And we hams like to go and hang out at clubs and do other things, events that aren't related to radio. But I tend to gravitate to events that are on the radio. Obviously, probably. So it is. So what is it? It's a part contest and the rules are structured in this contest. So QSOs only count for when you work hams in North Carolina.
Oh, I see.
Unlike it's kind of like the ARRL-DX contest, where QSOs only count when you work hams that are in the United States or North America. I should say North America.
So the North Carolina QSO party is only interested really in contacts being made with hams from North Carolina.
That's right. Who are in and working from North Carolina.
Now, is there a marketing opportunity there? I mean, do you get a list of hams that at the QSO party that you see are not involved in clubs, are not involved? I mean, is there an opportunity there to kind of, make the tent bigger?
Oh, of course. Well, we have a website, of course, and we have all the information about it is on the website, which is ncqsoparty.org, for those that are interested. And so what do you mean make the tent opportunity? Yes, we basically get on the air And what happens is hams will hear the QSO party on the air, like they hear a contest, like they would. And unlike some of the other bigger events, CQ Worldwide, the DX contest, all the big ones, the CQ 160, all the, big ones, North American QSO party, all those. State QSO parties tend to be more colloquial. They tend to be more, I say, for lack of a better word, laid back. That's an American idiom, but it just means casual. It means more relaxed, less stress. And so you work QSO. My standing joke for the QSO party is a QSO party is a QSO party is where an actual QSO might break out from time to time, other than the 5-9 goodbye, So, which there's a lot of that. There is a lot of that. So it's a way for us as hams to compete in a game, but not have so much pressure. So basically, it boils down to people feel more welcome to participate who are maybe intimidated a little bit by contesting, or think contesting is kind of they don't think have much merit in it, or as an endeavor. What's the point? 5-9 goodbye. So that's what it is. It's just basically it's more laid back, more relaxed, and there's not as much pressure. And the clubs in North Carolina are heavily involved in the QSO party, and they get together as a club, and we call it Light Up North Carolina. We get them, obviously, if the object is for people all over the world to work hams in North Carolina, then we obviously have to have hams on the air from North Carolina. That's a good thing, right? And to talk about hams all over the world, I do mean literally. We've had first place, and we give plaques and awards, and we have standings, and people submit their logs, and we score their logs, and it's a measure of their ability, their effort. And so in return we give prizes. We give plaques, certificates, and bragging rights to some clubs, because amongst the clubs, the clubs, well, they want to be a first place club, right?
When is the QSO party this year?
Okay, well, this year it's March the 1st.
It's coming up.
In 4 weeks, for 3.5 weeks.
Right, so I'll have to publish this before the QSO party. It's coming up, so I can promote it. I can tell you that it literally is a worldwide event, because we've had first place finishers for out of state, among the out of staters in the Czech Republic. So I'm saying you can get on if now I don't know when the propagation. I don't know when the propagation would be good for you to work us, but if you do that, we're on 20. We try to emphasize the hams and hey, be on 20, be on 15, as much as possible, because we want to work. We want to spread it out as far as we can. So we try to, of course, when later in the day when it goes on, most everybody, migrates over to 40 and 80, and that kind of closes in a little bit. But we try to encourage people to stay on 15 and 20 and even 10. As much as possible, and hopefully maybe 10 meters this year. And it's CW only, or it's all Morse?
No. It's CW, phone, and FT digital, and FT8. All those modes all at once, and it goes for 10 hours. It goes from East. It goes Zulu. It goes from 1200 Zulu to 0800. That's 01 the next day. So it goes from 1200 Zulu on what is 10 a.m. It's +5. So 10 + 5 is 15. It's 1500 Zulu on March 1st to 0100 Zulu on March 2nd, which in Eastern time that's 10 a.m. in the morning until 8 p.m. But for you in Israel, it's 1500 to 0100 the next day.
And you're very active in your ham radio club. And what's the ham radio club that you belong to?
Raleigh Amateur Radio Club. It's in the little town in Irwin, which I live, is a suburb. It's a suburb, not a suburb. It's just a outlying town of Raleigh.
And how is the Raleigh Amateur Radio Club doing with new membership? I mean, are you growing as a result of your efforts, and are you getting new hams, or are you finding hams that were not affiliated who are coming on board too? And if you're doing that, what's your secret? What are you doing to promote ham radio in Raleigh?
All of the above. Raleigh Amateur Radio, unlike I call it maybe the exception to the rule. Mm-hmm. It is a very vibrant contemporary club. To give you an idea, there are actually, from what I last read, there are 500 members, of which, as you might imagine, only maybe 20 or 30% of them are actually who I know. You know how that goes. And so we have, yes, there have been some major changes of late in the last couple of years by a new administration of officers in the club who are bringing so many good things that I spoke about earlier to ham radio, about bringing it forward into the present and onto. They have a vision for what they need to be doing, and they're doing it. And I can't say enough good things about them, what they have done just in the last few years, how they have revitalized club. I tell you what, anybody who's interested in what their club should be doing to revitalize it and to bring it up, have them contact me, and I'll put you in touch with a couple of people that I know that, and I'm going to point out one guy in particular, NC4FG, Finn Gold, his name. And I got to tell you, I'll put you in touch with Finn, and he can really help you out, because I tell you what, I can't say enough good things about that club. Is it perfect? No, of course it's not. But I got to tell you, it's as vibrant a club that I have been in 50 years of my ham career.
I mean, are you seeing kids, teenagers, like when we were? Are you seeing teenagers come in? And what's the hook for them?
I'm seeing, I'll give you an example. Last month, there was a guy in his 20s talking about connecting an HT to some kind of app on a phone, okay? Which I didn't quite understand completely, but that's okay, giving a presentation that he was the speaker at the club meeting, and it was great. Was it something I was particularly interested in doing? No, not particularly interesting. But the point is there are people, members that are coming in, new members are feeling welcome. They're getting involved. We have a part of the club meeting, which is once a month, among many other things, is 1.5 hours before the club meeting. The club meeting is at 7 o'clock, at 7:30. At 6 o'clock, they have what's called the new ham meeting. If you're a newly minted ham and you want to know what ham radio is all about, and you want to get involved and you want to learn new things, stuff that we all, as you and I all take for granted, is taught and talked about and discussed in that meeting. So it's a meeting within a meeting for the new hams to learn about ham radio, and they have a presentation. There's the guy that does it is a great guy. He's very, very involved and very passionate about new hams. They talk about how to make a QSO on a repeater. They talk about how to build a dipole. They talk about how to build a ground plane antenna for 2 meters. Just they run the gamut of all kinds of things. They have a topic, and they're all together. The new hams plus the leadership. I've been in the meeting. Ted has asked me to come into the meeting and talk about the QSO party for the new hams. What should a new ham do to get involved with the QSO party? And there's things that and avenues for them to take. Getting involved with the club, et cetera, and a joint operation, stuff like that. And so, okay, so that's that. What are they doing? Gosh, how can I say this without? I got to be careful. Us old guys have got to come up to speed. Us old guys have got to get with it. Okay. I'm an old guy. I'm one of the old guys. Let's get with it, guys. We've got to get with it. I know that your test, you had to draw a schematic. I know during the test, you had to draw a schematic. We had to draw a schematic of a transmitter to get a ham test.
Yeah, a Hartley oscillator or a Colpitts oscillator, something like that.
I know. We appreciate that. Yes. But, they don't do that now. Get over it.
It's funny that every time, and it happens frequently, I'll run into people, they say, I run into podcasters usually, and they'll say, well, what do you do your podcast on? And I say, well, I do it on amateur radio, and I get this blank look. So just recently, in the last month or so, a podcaster, a guy named Avi Abelo, has moved in next door to me. So there's a rental unit across from my office here, and it's the downstairs of a house. And so he rents it as an office. And today he was interviewing Diane Neal, who used to play the assistant district attorney on Law and Order. And
really?
And Diane has moved to Israel for some reason, and he's interviewing her in the backyard. So I hear this going on, and I've never seen I've never seen Law and Order, so I didn't really recognize her. But they stopped for a second and they talked to me and they said, Eric does a podcast because Avi knows I've known him for a while. And so she asks me, well, what do you do your podcast on? I said, I do it on amateur radio. She says, oh, well, that's very interesting. I know all about amateur radio. And I'm thinking, people in America must know about amateur radio, but nobody here knows about amateur radio. For some reason, in Israel, we haven't done a great job of educating even people who are in their 50s, 40s, whatever, that amateur radio exists, because it's no longer – amateur radio was big in Israel when the cost of long-distance calls from here to America was right? But as soon as the price dropped and there was competition and there were cell phones, amateur radio recognition went away. So I guess it's one of the things that we have to do on all sides is to kind of bang the drum for amateur radio that we're still here, and that our old timers were not. It's not just CW and single sideband anymore. It's a million things.
Right. I have looked for, and for some reason I was looking, as I looked through the data that we get in and all the Insecuso party, I can't recall of ever seeing a 4Z in the list of calls anywhere for anybody. Well,
so we're going to have to change that somehow.
I'm going to look for you. I'm going to be looking for you, Eric.
Yeah, well, I only have an inverted V. So, it's interesting, to see with the digital modes give me this opportunity to actually see how the antenna propagates. Not only by how it hears, by how it listens, using QSK reporter or whatever it's called, but how it transmits. So I'll have to see if I am even heard in the Carolinas, but I think that would be interesting.
Yeah, so what's happening with the club? It's just that it's not, that's one aspect of it, but there's more to it than just that. I think Finn and he put together a team that really, his leadership was really good, and he just basically was able to navigate the political landscape so that he was able to institute a lot of really good positive changes. And those positive changes, they might have had a little bit of resistance first, but he didn't let that stop him. And what he did, he persevered. And when he did, gosh, it's starting to cascade now, and it's starting to build on itself. And I tell you what, there are new hams in the club. There are old hams in the club that are still there. I'm one of them. It's the whole gambit is there, and everybody is thinking positively about the club. And I'm just thinking, what was it? It was just leadership who was able to navigate the political landscape to basically bring in the new stuff that has been in ham radio for some of it for a while now that needed to be brought in, and they did it.
Before we land the plane here, I think that one of the things I think I've observed over the years, and I think this generation tends to be more fragile, I might say, right? And so the biggest fear they have is rejection. It seems to me, social rejection, and I think that ham radio clubs where they don't recognize a newcomer instantly, that lack of recognition looks like rejection.
Well, that's right, and
I think that amateur radio clubs and other social events, field days, POTA activations as a group, when somebody new steps into the circle, that they're recognizing them right away is probably going to be key to keeping them coming back.
Right. Well, we have in RARS, we have the POTA outdoor group, or what they call it, it's the activation group. They do POTA, and it's organized among RARS with a leader, and he's basically looking to bring in new hams to bring them out and show them what's going on with it. He finds the new hams in the new ham meeting. He comes to the new ham meeting. He makes an appearance regularly in the new ham meeting, and to talk about that when Ted wants to talk about it. We have the new meeting, and what's really interesting is you can make an effort to welcome people at the meeting, and I don't know. I'm not a psychologist. I don't know about that, but I do know that people like to be heard, and what I know, what I read and learned as I learned new things about psychology is that people don't remember if they go somewhere new, they don't remember what they saw, or they don't remember what they saw, but they remember how they felt.
That's right.
And so what we want to do, and here's the thing, we can say, okay, we want to have an outreach, and we want to have a guy at the door shaking hands. We want to have a guy, we want to greet them, at a meeting, and have them stand up and embarrass themselves of being new. And we can do all these things, but you can't fake it. You have to have an attitude that you really are glad to see them there. And what will happen is, if you actually are inside glad to see them there, then whatever, you don't have to plan to do anything. You just have to just be there, and they will feel it. It's kind of like, when you look at somebody and they're smiling, fake smile, and then a real smile. For some reason, we as humans know the difference. We just know. And so
we read the room.
Right. And so if you actually feel in your heart that you're glad to see them there, then whatever you do and however you talk to them, you don't have to worry about anything. It'll be good. They will feel fine. So the organized efforts to shake their hand at the door, make them stand up, and embarrass themselves, stuff like that, that's great, whatever. But it's got to be more. It's got to be more than that. You have to have an attitude that you're glad. And boy, believe it or not, believe it. I'm glad to see him, because I'm looking for new CW ops, because I want to be able to do CW. I want to be the last thing I do in this life is to have a CW. And I can only do that if there's people younger than me that know CW. For example, that's my thing. So I see new hams as opportunities to relate to and to be on the air with.
So Marty, what advice would you give to new returning hams then? To the
hams.
I was a returning ham. I never let my license lapse. I was always playing in radio. Even I was working in radio for 25 years, professionally. So, but I'm not involved with the clubs. I'm not involved with with the QST magazine. I don't really know what's going on. So I'm coming back after 25 years of not doing ham radio. What would you? Well, not. This was my story some years ago, but what would you say is the advice that you would give to somebody who's coming back in after a long hiatus out, or somebody who's brand new to the hobby and you want to, kind of light the fire?
Well, have a frame of mind as if you were new, because I can tell you, ham radio in 50 years, I remember the old days. I love the old days, I love it. But it has changed dramatically. And depending on your own situation, how long you've been away and when you were away, what you missed, I would say just have a mindset that you're new and be ready for that, because it has changed so much. And we appreciate hearing your stories. I'm glad people appreciate hearing my stories. I love telling my stories, I love telling my story. But realize that it's different now. It really is. It really is. 10 meters can be wide open now, and you don't hear a soul on it like you did in the old days. They're all in FT8.
That's right.
Doing that.
That's how I know if the band is open, as I go over to FT8 to see if there's any signals there.
Embrace it. No, you're not going to. I remember the old days. My field day one day 10 opened. 10 was so much fun for me, especially on CW, but especially on CWs. But that's those days. I think those days are gone. And that's fine. It's okay. What's exciting now? So I would just say my first advice would be approach it like you're brand new, and be open to all the new stuff, because there's so much
stuff.
So much that you can and pick. And then next thing, don't be overwhelmed by it all. Pick a path that interests you, whether it's POTA, whether it's FT8, whether it's whatever might interest club, whatever. So many things. Kind of narrow it down for yourself, at least at first, and pick something that you can come up to speed on fairly quickly, because you still have experience, you still know the jargon. The jargon hasn't changed all that much, So you have a step up for being new, but just take the attitude that you're. And I think that's really good advice.
Marty, I think we're going to land it here. I want to thank you so much for joining me on QSO today. I so appreciate your coming on board, and I want to wish you 73. Thank you so much.
That's right, 73 to you, and best to you and your podcast. Thank you, Eric.
That concludes this episode of QSO Today. I hope that you enjoyed this QSO with Mike. Please be sure to check out the show notes that include links and information about the topics that we discussed. Go to www.qsotoday.com and put in VE3GFN in the search box at the top of the page. You can sponsor the transcription of this episode or any of the previous episodes by clicking on the transcription button on every show notes page. The cost is $75 per episode, regardless of the length. We will quickly transcribe the episode and give you credit for your sponsorship. Please send us the call sign of the podcast to make sure that we transcribe what you want. Remember that QSO Today is value for value. Please support our project by making a donation or becoming a listener sponsor today. Use our Amazon link before shopping at Amazon, as we receive a small commission on your Amazon purchases. Subscribe to our mailing lists, both my blog and the podcast, and forward the messages to friends and family who would enjoy QSO Today content. Promote us on social media and give us a 5-star rating and reviews whenever you are asked. QSO Today is available on every podcast player and venue, including Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and Podcasting 2.0. Get a Podcasting 2.0 player to make it easy to get your next episode as soon as we publish. Until next time, this is Eric for Z1UG 73. The QSO Today podcast is a product of KEG Media Inc., who is solely responsible for its content.